come to you, Fabian Eberle, CEO of Keyless. I don't know if you try to understand some of the what has been said before from the other two colleagues, gentlemen, but I want to involve you in just to have your vision and your, let's say, experience based on how all the identity problem and the access is moving related to preserve the identity of the users, but also to improve the usage of process and application in the organization. Please. Do you have a presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, grazie. Buongiorno a tutti. Thank you very much for having us. I'm Fabian, co-founder and COO of Keyless. And yeah, today I'd like to talk about the challenges and trends we see in identity and access management today, but also the future of identity around a more personal, private, and secure way of managing our own identities. To us as Keyless, we are a deep tech cybersecurity company, and we provide passwordless authentication solutions that are based on privacy-preserving biometric authentication technology that allows us to authenticate people, not just devices or passwords, across every device without having to store biometric data anywhere, not on the user's devices and not in any central database, and makes it simple, easy, and secure to accessing our personal identities and accounts from everywhere. Coming back to the password problem that we all see and face on a daily basis, which is the underlying issue when it comes to digital identities and authentication today, which isn't just a user experience issue, but it's also a huge risk with about more than 80% of data breaches going back to passwords, and also a large operational cost when it comes to help desks, password resets, call centers, just the time spent in inputting passwords. And biometrics are a great means for overcoming this trade-off between user experience and privacy and security in authentication and identity management more broadly, but they come with their own quite severe limitations, which are either local, so dependent on the underlying device, which locks us into a particular technology provider, or central, which requires that biometric data is stored in a central database, which comes with a huge burden and liability from a security and privacy compliance perspective. So what we see today is that there's increasing demands for security, in particular in this new normal that we live in, with a rapid digital transformation that we've seen over the last few months, a transition to the cloud from on-prem to cloud environments with a huge number of devices that are now being used, with people working from everywhere who have huge expectations on the user experience, not just the end users, but also employees and businesses that need to remain resilient against both cyber and social engineering attacks that we've seen skyrocket over the past few months. So the approach that we propose is a technology that is completely software-based and runs across every device with a universal set of private biometrics that allows to authenticate the real individual, not just the device, and eliminate passwords altogether in a way that does not require personal identifiable information or biometric data to be stored anywhere, not on the user device, and not in any central database. So this far exceeds requirements for GDPR compliance and other privacy regulations when coming around the treatment of sensitive personal data, such as biometrics. On a conceptual level, we are transforming the user's biometric into a private key that can be used for a variety of use cases, one being authentication to generate a token and log in to an enterprise identity provider. You could authorize payments, and you don't have to copy-paste a PIN code. But I think the most innovative means that we've also heard from Danilo just before is around self-sovereign identities and making selectively disclosing our personal information in a more private and secure way, which requires these underlying key management operations that we could facilitate through a simple biometric authentication process rather than credentials that you have to remember. And all this without having to store biometric data or sensitive personal data on the user device, nor in any central point on the architecture side. But every authentication in itself offers a multi-factor authentication approach, whereby we verify the user's device as something you possess. And again, this can be any device you wish to use, an old iPhone, an Android device, a Windows workstation, your face as a physical biometric, but we also ensure that you're a real human, so you couldn't use a video or a picture, and soon behavioral characteristics that are unique to yourself, such as the way you hold your phone, the way you swipe, the way you type on the keyboard, as an added layer of security. Our technology has been recognized by Gartner as one of the innovative biometric authentication technologies in the context of identity and access management last year, and we bring this to market across two broad lines of product today, which is the keyless authenticator for passwordless authentication across the enterprise. So removing passwords end-to-end from the employee authentication experience when it comes to accessing applications as a passwordless single sign-on, as a desktop MFA solution when you access your workstations across a variety of devices and operating systems from Windows 7 to Windows 10, Mac and Linux, and remote login for accessing VPN applications for the remote workforce with a high assurance that the employee is truly the individual who's connecting from a remote location. And from a user experience point of view, it's fairly simple. As an employee, you just put in your username, your email address, you click on the login button, you receive a push notification on your mobile device, or you leverage the built-in camera of your laptop, you present your face, and you complete a passwordless multi-factor authentication process. So there's nothing you need to remember. There's no device that you're limited to. You can use as many devices as you wish, and you're authenticated in a second. And the same goes for other use cases, such as accessing your workstation, your Windows workstation, for example, with the same user experience across any device you want to use. Again, a simple look into the camera when you click on login and you're in. It doesn't take much time. It's very easy and it's consistent across all devices. Aside from the workforce authentication use cases, we also offer consumer authentication use cases, and predominantly three, which are centered around payments and open banking for PSD2 compliant strong customer authentication, customer MFA, and electronic signatures or decentralized identities in the form of our Mobile SDK that facilitates these strong authentication processes or end-user key management operations in a seamless way. And the user experience is pretty much the same. The user doesn't need to copy-paste a one-time code, doesn't have to switch to another soft token, simply remains in the application and authorizes a payment with a simple look in the front-facing camera. And we're seeing this not only as something as very valuable in the context of open banking and payments, but as something that is required to underpin this new paradigm of user-centric or self-sovereign identity management, where users selectively disclose and own their personal information, which requires these underlying key management operations to be performed. And what we could do with our technology is doing this through a simple biometric authentication experience that is consistent across all devices and interoperable or agnostic to the underlying infrastructure for identity that is being used and the user device that the user is using. Just to round off with one example of an implementation we've done with a customer in Italy, Lewis University, where we authenticate now more than 13,000 students who access their remote education services and exams through keyless at home. And we can assure that the student who's accessing these sessions is truly the individual who should be doing so, independent of the device that they're using, and no passwords involved. With that, I thank you very much for your attention and look forward to being.
Yes, thank you, Evelyn. Do you know speed?
Yes.
Do you know speed? Yes, you know. So do you think that your system can be applied to speed or not?
Yes, I think very much so, and specifically around the authentication into the digital identity speed itself. So removing the credentials and tying the digital identity to you as an individual. We call it "you are the key," in making yourself the owner of your digital identity without having a username or password that you need to use to access your digital identity.